Okay, a good moed. We are learning Maseches Eruvin, Daf Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. Yesterday, we spent a significant amount of time focusing on a little bit of a difficult Tosefta. And this was a Tosefta that focused on the cities of the Levim, and in specific, the Migrash, the 1,000 Amma ring that surrounded the city. I forgot my magma tiles at home. Hopefully my son will be running it through the door shortly. But if there were to be this city of 2,000 by 2,000 amos, and around it would be the tchum, which is normally 2,000 wide. So the first half of that 2,000 was going to be the migrash, where nothing was, really wasn't supposed to be used. It was meant to make it a little bit more of a spacious area for them. And then in the outside of the tchum, the outermost aspect within the tchum, the last 1,000 amos of the 2,000 amos, so that can be used for anything. Now, the difficulty that we had yesterday was that the Tosefta writes that the migrash was 1/4 of the size of that space, and that was very difficult to understand how that worked out. So yesterday we gave Rava's answer, and we explained how it got to 1/4. We said that really the migrash was a circle, and that ended up being 9 out of the 36 units, and 9 times 4 is 36, so it was 1/4. Now we're going to learn 3 other simpler answers. Oh, the first one's not as simple, but 3 other answers to this exact question, which is, how is it that the migrash of the Levim was actually 25% when seemingly the numbers didn't work? So let's check. We're 3 lines from the bottom on Nunvavim with Beis, and we saw the answer yesterday of Rava, which was 2/3 of the way down, and now we're going to start with the answer of Abaye. Abaye Amar Mishkachas Lanami B'mata Dehavya Alpha Be'alpha. It would even be true if the city of the Levim was 1,000 Amma by 1,000 Amma. How would it work out? Now it's not so wide, so the Tchumen, if you have 1,000 Amos, the Tchumen, if you'd make the plus sign, it would be 2,000 out in each direction, right? So that's what the Gemara says here. Tchumen Kamahave Tmanya. There would be 8 boxes. 2 boxes due east and west, and 2 boxes north and south. That's 8. Chronos. Now the corners are still going to be 4. There's still going to be 4 boxes, as it were, 4 1,000 by 1,000 units, and there's 4 corners. So Chronos Kamehavi Shisar 16, and that is a total 8 plus 16 is 24. And how large was the migrash of the Levim, the space around the city, the first 1,000 amos of the tchum? Dal arba de tchumen. There were 4 in the due directions, due north, west, east, and south. There were 4 of those, and also the arba de chronos in 4 of the corners, and that means that we had 8. We had 8 1,000 by 1,000 boxes, which were going to be the tchum. So kamahave tmanya, but that's only till. So we said there's a total of 24 boxes, but your migrash is 8, and the Tosefta said it was 1/4, but 8 is 1/3 of 24. So how do you get your numbers right? The Gemara gives the same answer that it gave earlier. Misabris beribua kamar. You are talking about where there's a quarter. It's you were talking about where it's a square. Says the Gemara, it wasn't a square. Really, the migrash that surrounded the city was circular, and we know that space was actually smaller. Kama meruba yeser al ha'igul. How much larger is what you thought was a square migrash? How much larger is that than our new circle? Says the Gemara, Revia, it's a difference of 1/4, and we initially said it was 8. So dal Revia, take 1/4 off of 8, pashul hushisa. What's left is 6, and then v'shisa michav dalid rivahave. And now that we have again built the migrash into a circular shape, so now because a circle is 1/4 less than the square that surrounds it in surface area, in volume, not volume, in surface area. So therefore we're left with 6. 6 is 1/4 of 24, and the Tosefta has again been corrected. We're 5 lines down on Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. Here is now the third answer to explain how the migrash, the space immediately surrounding the city of the Levim, was only 1/4 of the larger area. Ravina Amar, my Ravia. What is it 1/4 of? The migrash of the Levim? Says the Gemara. Did I skip? No, Ravina Amar, my Ravia de Tchumen. We only look at the Tchum. The migrash of the Levim was not in the corners. It was only due east, west, north, and south. So we're back. Ravina is actually back into the answer of 2,000 by 2,000. He's not with the second answer of Abaye. So he says that we're talking about 2,000 by 2,000. So what do you have on each side of the migrash? You have on each edge, you have 2 boxes on each of the 4 directions. That's 8, and 8 is 1/4 of 32, because 32 was the number of boxes that we were discussing yesterday within the answer of Rava that we learned the other day. And this is answer number 3 of Ravina, that when he says that the Migrash is a Ravia, we don't look at the corners. We only look at the boxes that are due east, west, north, and south. And there are 8 of those, and 8 is a fourth of 32. Again, validating the Tosefta. Answer number 4 is Ravashi. Ravashi Amar, my Ravia de Kronos. He says, no, you thought that the Migrash of the Levim was all the way around this. No, the only place that there was a Migrash was in the corners. So let's say, for example, that this had been a perfect square. So where's the Migrash of the Levim? Right here. This is where the Migrash was, only at the corners. It wasn't due anything. It was only the square that would be at the corner right here. And there were 4 of them. So there's 4 Migrashe Levia. And it was relative to the other 3 boxes in the corner. That was a quarter. So that only comparing itself to the corners, 1 out of every 4 boxes in every corner was considered to be part of the Migrash. And that is how Ravashi explains the Tosefta. Good. These are the 4 answers: Rava, Abaye, Ravina, and Rav Ashi. Now the Gemara, up until the Mishnah, will ask a couple of questions on this. The first one's relatively easy, and that is the shita that we saw of the corners that we just saw, and asks the Gemara as follows: Amar le Rabbanan le Rav Ashi, I'm very confused. Saviv ksiv. You said that the Migrash of the Levim was only in the corners, but the pasuk says Saviv. What does the word Saviv mean? All the way around. So you said that it's only in the corners. Mehechatesi. How did you come up with such a shita that it would only be in the corners? That doesn't make any sense. So says the Gemara. Answers the Gemara, my Saviv de Kronos. It means at the corners. Where's my precedent for that? The ilo temahachi. If you don't say that the word Saviv means corners, then gabe ola tichsiv, in regards to the korban ola, the pasuk says v'zarakuas adam al mizbeach Saviv. We say this in korbanos every morning. Where do you throw the blood on the mizbeach? Saviv. Hachanami Saviv mamish. It's not all the way around. Elamai Saviv. What does it mean? Saviv de Kronos. Where do you put the blood? Al karnos hamizbeach. So where we see the word Saviv applying to Kronos is by Ola. It says Gemara, Hachanami, Maya Saviv, Saviv de Kronos. He has a beautiful Marimakom. That's very supportive of his Shita. Because our Mishnah says that the Migrash of the Levim was Saviv. And he says Saviv is Kronos. The Gemara says Saviv doesn't mean Kronos. He says, yes, it does. Go look by Korbanos. Where do we do this? Rika Saddam, it's always by the Kronos and Mizbeach. Next question is about 10 lines down, 11 lines down. Amar le Rav Chavivi, Michozna le Rav Ashi. V'ha'ika Mursha de Karnasa. This is a difficult question to understand without Rashi. The truth is, it's difficult for me to understand even with Rashi, but I'll explain outside for the sake of saving time. He says, I don't understand how all of this works. You said that the city was square, right? It used to be circle, you made it into a square. And then around there was a circle for the Migrash of the Levim. Now, if you make it such that there's 1,000 amos from the circle, from, like, let's say one side of the circle to the actual square, like if this is one side and you have a semicircle, right? So then if you make this 1,000, then the corners are not 1,000. That's effectively what the Gemara is asking. So says the Gemara, no, your question is faulty because it's Bemata Igulta. The city that we're talking about is in fact circular. So it's, instead of it being a circle around the square, it's a circle around a circle, and it's a perfect 2,000 almost everywhere. But says the Gemara, you just said that the city was square. The city itself. I know you answered twice over. Rava and Abaye both answered this, that the city of that the Migrash around the city was circular, but the city was square. That's the Gemara's question. V'harivua, you said it was a square. Says Gemara, Amor de Amrinan. When do we say that it's a square? Chazinon keman demir, but it's a halachic mitzias, because we're lenient by Tchumen. So the city really was a circle. We conceptually made it into a square for being marviach bezavios. Fine. But the city itself was actually circular. So when we had the city that was a circle, and then the Migrash of the Levim was a larger circle around it, the distance between the edge of the city and the edge of the Migrash of the Levim was 1,000 all the way around, and the question falls away. Rivu avada mimir bana, you're actually going to build out the city to have houses all the way to the corners? You're not going to build it out. The city happens to be a circle. The only mitzias of a square around that city is to be marviach the zavios. Next question, and this will bring us to the Mishnah. Amar le Rav Chaniloi michuzna le Rav Ashi michli. I don't understand something. Kama meruba yeser al ha'igul. You said how much is larger is a square than a circle? Revia. You said that there's a 25% difference of a square that surrounds a circle. But, says the Gemara, I don't understand. Hani tamne meya, that's 800, right? So we said, if you have 2,000 amos, a 2,000 amos circle, right? You got your huge circle, 2,000 amos, and you put a square around it such that the distance, the shortest distance is going to be 2,000. What is the corner? So this is the math that we did already, that when you have a 45, 90 triangle, you have a square basically, it's a perfect square, 2,000 by 2,000, the hypotenuse is times 1.4 of any one side. So 2,000 times 1.4 is 2,800, which means that what you gained in each corner was 800. Says the Gemara, if a square is larger than a circle by only 25%, well, 800 is not the right number. How did you get a corner of 800? If a square is larger than a circle, what should the math have been, says the Gemara? How could it be 800? It should have been shis me'ah, v'shisin, v'sheva nechi til sahave. It should have been 667 minus a third, namely 666 and 2/3. Now that is 1/3 of 2,000, because we said that you're going to have a quarter that's added on the other side, which would have made for 4 quarters. That's the appropriate share. Well, how did you get to 800? Amar le, hani mili be'igula migo revo. That's true when the circle is immediately around, when the circle is surrounding the square, when the circle is inside the square. That's when the corner is exactly 666. But here, aval ba'alachsona, here because we wanted to make the angle full, we wanted to gain an extra distance, so we pushed off the square. It wasn't touching the sides of the circle. The square is larger than the circle. That's why the number changed, because we were going for the angle distance of Abalachsona, but tzvei. And who thought that we didn't have the rules of geometry back in the day? Says the Gemara, de Amar Mar, right before the Mishnah, Kol Amsa Biribua. If you have something that is an Amma by an Amma, then what is that? The angle. Amsa v'trei chom sheba alachsona. We multiply by 1 and 2/5, which is 1.4, which is the square root of 2. Remember what I said, this is the same thing. If let's say this was a square, if this was a perfect square, and this is 2,000, and this is 2,000, then this angle is the square root of 2. It's x times the square root of 2. That's every 45, 90 try. If this was a square, you measure one side, instantly do the math times 1.4, you'll know the math in the middle. That's what we're effectively doing. 2,000 by 2,000, the hypotenuse has to be 20. It has to be 2,800 because we multiply times 1.4. And the Gemara is just laying out the math to explain how we got it to be that when we had our circled city inside the square, we added a square around the city to be marviach the zavios. So we pushed out at the side of the circle. At the side of the circle to get the box, there's 2,000, and then at the corner it's 800 extra amos, and that's awesome. We get 2,800 instead of just 2,000. Good, Baruch Hashem. That brings us to the Mishnah, Nun Zayin Mad Aleph, halfway down. This will take us to the end of the day, to the bottom of the Zayin Amud Beis, Yirtzeh Hashem, to the next Mishnah. This sugya is going to be speaking about a karfeif. We've spoken about this in a slightly different frame. In this case, a karfeif is a small area that is given outside of a city, and Rashi on the top of the Amud writes that it's for noi, that it is to make a city more decorative, a little bit more appealing. If you've ever flown into some cities and you see where they have these beautiful landscaped areas that you can see from the plane, welcome to Chicago, welcome to Los Angeles. Some cities have this, they're gorgeous. They cost a lot of money to make, they cost a lot of money to maintain, but it makes the landscaping look beautiful. So Rashi on the top of Nun Zayin Amud Beis highlights that this is for noi, that this is for beauty. And with that as a background, that will help us understand the machlokas Rav Meir and the Chachamim. Let's get started. Nostan karfeif li'ir divrei Rav Meir. For every city you give a karfeif, we'll see that amount is 70 amos plus a little bit. No, the only time you ever get to give this space is when there's two cities between them. One city doesn't need it; it's living by itself. It doesn't need to have any beauty around it. It's not going to be scrunched up against another city. It's by itself. It's a standalone city. It doesn't need anything lenoi. However, the Chachamim say only when there's two cities. And then another line that we're going to see is subject to machlokas as to what it actually means. If you have two cities, and each of them, so you have two cities, city X and city Y, and in between them, each of them have these karfeif, the 70 b'shirayim, between them, then osa karfeif es shtehen lios ke'echad. Then the middle beautification area unifies those cities so that they can travel between one another on Shabbos. Nothing, they're one city basically. So again, two cities, city A, city B, karfeif A, karfeif B. If there's any overlap at all, the cities are effectively one. Good, that's this middle shita. We don't yet know who the author of it is. And then another din in the Mishnah, V'chein Gimel Kfar, we'll learn about this more as well. 3 villages, Hamishuloshin, which are in thirds or threes, right? There's three of them, it seems. We'll see how this plays out in the Gemara as well. Very confusing in the Mishnah. But if between between the two outer ones, or really the outer one to the middle one, again, hard to understand right now, we'll see. If the maximum is the two that are in the middle, the two karfefios that are in the middle, so 70 plus 70 plus, which is, it is mea ve'arbaim va'achas u'shlish, then asa emtzai, the city that's in between them, es shlashtam lios echad. So again, here's the layout. You have city A and a karfef, and you have city B with a karfef, so between these two is 141. And then on the other side, you have city B with a karfef here, and city C with its karfef, so city, karfef, city, karfef, city. So all of them are one, says the Mishnah. That's the case of Shlashtam. We'll have to see how this plays out halachically. Let's get started with the Gemara. Our analysis of the Mishnah, Nun Zayin and Aleph, 3/4 of the way down, opens the Gemara. Minan Emili, how do we know that there should be a karfef at all? Machlokas, who this applies to? Is this only Rav Meir? Is this also Rav Yehuda? Also the Chachamim, says the Gemara as follows. Amar Rava de Amar Kra, the Pasuk says, Min kirha yirba chutza, from the wall of the city and outwards. Amra Torah, Tain Chutza, Ve'achar Kach Medod. First, give a little bit of space. You give your 70 and a third, 70 and Vishiraim, and then you can start measuring your Tchum. So we have a little bit more space to work with, according to Rav Meir and according to the Chachamim, if there's two cities. Okay, now let's analyze the sheets of the Chachamim. Let's just look back in the Mishnah for a moment so we can get clarity on their words. The Chachamim Omrim in the Mishnah, it says, Lo Amru Karfef Ela Bein Shtei Ayaros. One city doesn't get. Two cities gets in between them. Good. Back in the Gemara, 10 lines from the bottom, 2 dots. V'chachamim lo amru. That's not actually, that is actually our Mishnah, that the language. I thought it was different for a moment. They say, lo amru, you're not allowed to get a karfef unless there's two cities. Says the Gemara, how does it work? Machlokas amoraim itmar. Rav Huna amar nosin karfef lezu v'karfef lezu. Each city gets a karfef, right? However, says Chia Barav Amar, he says, karfef echad l'shtein. So according to the first shita, it's city, karfef, city. And according to shita number 2, it's city, one karfef, and then another city. So says the Gemara, wait a minute. Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, V'chachamim omrim, lo amru karfef, in the singular, ela bein bezayaros, to yufta de Rav Huna. Rav Huna wanted to say that each city gets a karfef. But if you look at our Mishnah, the word karfef is used in the singular. So how can you, Rav Huna, come up with this chap that there's two? There's no room for two. It only says karfef in the singular in our Mishnah. Says the Gemara, Amar lach Rav Huna, my karfef, stop. You're being such a yeka. You're looking at the diktuk in the Mishnah. It didn't mean karfef in the singular. It meant Torah's karfef. It meant the world of karfef, not just the one. It gets the halachos of karfef, not one karfef. It's just a more grand idea. Ula'olam karfef lezu v'karfef lezu. And really, even though the Mishnah was in singular, it didn't intend to be grammatically correct. The Mishnah was simply intending to say that it's the world of karfef, and you get two of them. Hachanami mistabra, says the Gemara, to support this shita of Rav Huna. This makes a lot of sense. Why? Because mitakatani seifa. Look at that next line in our Mishnah. Im yesh lezu ayin amam uvishiraim ulezu ayin amam vishiraim usekarfef lishtehem lios keachad. We saw later in our Mishnah that you are going to have a case where each city has 70 plus. So that is a very good argument. And in fact, says the Gemara, that argument is so good that maybe we should question Chia Barav. How can you say that there's one based on the fact that the Seifa clearly says that there's two? It's a great question. Says the Gemara, Amar lach Chia Barav. What would Rav Chia Barav say? Turning to the top of Nun Zayin Amud Beis, answers the Gemara, Hamani, who is the author of this third line of the Mishnah, the one that says that you get two houses in between two cities, two karfefios, between two cities, that is Rav Meir. So if you look back at the Mishnah, it's very strange. We have the sheet of Rav Meir, then we have the sheet of the Chachamim, and then the next line, which doesn't have a name in the Mishnah, is back to Rav Meir. So says the Gemara, why do I need both of those? I Rav Meir he, hatani la reisha, nos and karfef le'ir, divi Rav Meir. I already learned about this. Rav Meir said in the reisha that every city gets one. And then 2 lines later in the Mishnah, he says that every city gets one again. Why is he saying the same exact thing twice? So answers the Gemara as follows. Tzricha. Really, we need both statements of Rav Meir. We're 3 lines out from the top of Nun Zayin Amud Beis. Tzricha. Why do we need both? Says the Gemara. De'ime hahi hava min echad lechada b'chad l'tarte. If I only had the first line of our Mishnah of Rav Meir, statement number 1 of Rav Meir, what might I have thought? I might have thought exactly what he said. Every city, if there's a city, you get one karfef, and if there's another city, you also get one karfef. That would have been my havamina. Kamash Milan, the third line of our Mishnah, that Kamash Milan de la Tarte, if there are two cities, Tre Yahavina Luhu. Then they get two karfefios. They get two spaces of noi in between them. That's one reason why we needed this, the second part of our Mishnah, the second statement of Rav Meir. Maybe I would have thought that in the second statement of Rav Meir, that when there are two cities, how much is a karfef? It's 70 amos. What is that? At a maximum 140 feet? That's like most properties in our neighborhood are 125 feet front to back. Between two cities, that's not so much space. That's a very small amount of area. So says the Gemara, maybe I would have thought, Havamina, that it was Dechika Tash Mishtayu. That's why they got two. Aval Hasam, but with one city, like the first statement of our Mishnah, Delo Dechika Tash Mishtayu, Emalo, I might have thought they get nothing. So therefore, says Gemara Tzricha, we therefore need both statements of Rav Meir. The first statement of Rav Meir that every city gets one karfef, and we need the next statement of Rav Meir, which is the third line of our Mishnah, that when there are two cities, they don't get one karfef, they actually get two. Now let's analyze the next part of our Mishnah, which was the Mishulashin. What did our Mishnah say? 7 lines down in Zayin and Beis, Tnan. The Mishnah wrote, if you have three villages that are Mishulashin, if there is between the outer ones and seemingly the middle one, you have a combo of two karfevios, which is approximately 140 amos. So there we said that if between the outer city and the middle city is 140, and between the middle city and the other outer city is approximately 140, then because there's that middle city, everything is bound together. Perfect. Says the Gemara, that should be a tiyuvta against Rav Huna. That doesn't work for Rav Huna, because Rav Huna was of the opinion that you get karfei flazu v'karfei flazu, and that does not seem to be the way that our Gemara is structured. I skipped a line, excuse me. Says the Gemara, Taima, there were 10 lines down. Taima, the reason why our Mishnah works with the Mishulashin is the Ika Mitzai, is because there's a city in the middle. But if there wasn't a city in the middle, then two karfefios would be too much. Haleka and Mitzai lo. Had it been that there wasn't a city in the middle, the two cities wouldn't combine, implying that had there been two cities with two karfefios, that's not the way that the halacha works. You can only have one. That, says the Gemara, is tiyufta de Rav Huna. So answers Rav Huna, Amar lach Rav Huna, 1/3 of the way down in Zayin and Beis, Amar lach Rav Huna, Hoitmar Allah. No, Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi, Amar Rav Chanina. Lo Mishulashin Mamish, that case is not actually where there were three cities, one sequential to the next. Ella, what's going on? Rowan, it's a theoretical construct. Rowan kol she'ilu matil emtsai beinein v'yihu Mishulashin. Had it been theoretically that you were to place another city in between these two cities, such that the ein bein zeh la kuf mem ama ve'achas u'shlish, such that between two cities there wouldn't have been that large space, then asa emtsai es shlashim lios echad, and Rav Huna gets out of this question. Amar le Rav le Abaye, kama yehi bein chitzon le'emtsai, is there a maximum distance between the two? Amar le alpayim ama, the maximum that it can be is 2,000 amos between the cities, factoring in the Tchum Shabbos. You said Kavase de Rava Berei de Rava Berei de Rava Bar Rav Huna. You said, if you remember earlier, yesterday we spoke about the case of the Keshes, about the rainbow, and there we said Mistabra Damar Yoser Me'al Paimama. There we said that from the depth of the rainbow to the line where if you have a semicircle, my arm's upwards and upward. So the line between the two ends of the semicircle, so that line, how deep can the U shape be? So there the Gemara says that it was only 2,000 amos. I lost my spot here. We got Paimama. The Atu Damras, you said like him, Mistabra the Amar Yoser Me'al Paimama. You said that the U could be extremely deep. So the Gemara rejects this question altogether. What are you talking about? The 2,000 amos over there and over here don't apply. Over here, Hachi Hashta says Gemara, what's the comparison? Hasam, by the Keshes, we don't care how deep it is, because even if you're at the deepest part of the Keshes shape, you can always walk house to house and you will not have left your tchum yet. So I don't care if it's 10,000 amos deep. It could be the deepest U shape ever. It doesn't make a difference. I can always walk along the houses to get to the end. So that's what the Gemara says. Hasam, ikabatim. Over there, you could walk from house to house throughout the U-shaped space. And that's why over there, we said it was more than 2,000 amos depth. There, we didn't care. But hacha lekabatim, here between the two houses, between the two cities, there wasn't any houses that you could walk along. So therefore, the maximum is 2,000. Next question. How about from the outermost city to the outermost city? Would there be any limitations with these three mishulashim? Says the Gemara, don't care. As long as you don't break any of the rules, the cities can be huge. It doesn't make a difference. Kama yehei, it can be as large as you want. Ask the Gemara, what do you care? Says the Gemara, because kol she'ilu machnis emtsai beinehen ve'ein bein zeh ela mea ba'arba'im ba'achas u'shlish. We just have to follow the rules. As long as if you plunk a city down in the middle and you don't break any of the rules of tchum or of karfeif, then everything should work perfectly. And that solves the problem. Says Gemara, daled alpayim amma. Even if it were to be 4,000 amos, you'd be okay with that? Amar le'in, no problem. That was just a setup for a question. Wait a minute. Amar Ravuna, ir ha'asuya kikeshas. We spoke about this yesterday, a question that Ari Shabbat asked on yesterday, and I spent some time researching to find out that I was not correct. My measurement was wrong, and I'll share with you in a moment what that was. Amar Ravuna, ir ha'asuya kikeshas. If a city is made like that, U-shaped like a rainbow, im yesh bein beis rosheh pachos me'arba'as alafim. Amma, again, a U shape like this. Let's say my hands are the ends of the house in each fist. So if the distance between them is less than 4,000 amos, then moded and lamin hayeter, then you make your 2,000 amma measure from a theoretical string between the last two houses in the U shape, right? Theoretical string, and then you measure 2,000 amos out. However, says the Gemara, that had it been that there was less, v'im lav moded and lamin hakeshes. So the Gemara, the Rishonim had a difficult time with this language, and I'm appreciative to Ari for pointing this out, that the words Mod din lamin hakeshes doesn't mean from the depth of the rainbow. I had said you measure from the very belly of the rainbow all the way out. That's not correct. It's just from wherever you live. It's 2,000 amos from each house. So in that case, what do we see? We see that 4,000 amos is a maximum. That's a problem. So what about, how do we answer these two cases? How do we answer this stira? You said that from chitzon to chitzon it can be 4,000 amos. And over here it says otherwise by the case of the keshes. Amar le, 10 lines from the bottom. Hasam leika lememar mali. Hacha ika lememar mali. Over there by the tchum, there's nothing that's ever going to fill in the city. But if you are in the U shape, you're not going to fill in with houses. But where there are two cities, a lot of the space in between the two cities is filled with houses because they're large cities. It's not one row of houses. So that's how we get out of that particular question. Last one of the night, says the Gemara, a little bit of a short story. Amar le Rav Safra le Rabbi, Hare b'nei Akistophon, so the city of Akistophon, they would stretch their tchum in one direction, de Ashradir. Uvnei de Ashradir, mashchinan tchum mehagi. So de Akistophon. So you had two cities that overlap their tchumen. Again, like the Venn diagram model, they overlap their tchumen toward each other so that they could travel with each other. But asks the Gemara, those two cities, if you know the geography, you'll know that there's a problem because between those two cities is a major river, which is larger than that Karfev space. Says the Gemara, Ha'ika Diglas, there's a major river there. The Mifsika, it separates these two cities, and it's a karfeif, it's an unusable space, and it's yeser mimevar by machas v'shlish. So how are they allowed to make their tchum Shabbos? They broke the karfeif rule because there's more than 141 plus amos between them. That's unusable space. Answers the Gemara. Nafak achvele. He went to go show him. Hanach atmehasa deshura. There were rows of ruins in the water. There were rows of ruins in the water in very short distances. The mivlei bediglas that were swallowed in the water. Be'ayin ama b'shiraim, and the distance between each of those walls was less than that shear. In other words, we had breaking points where the karfeif met another karfeif, and that was considered reasonable, and that was therefore not a problem. This space was no longer considered to be more than 141 unbroken amos. We'll stop here. Mirza Hashem will pick up tomorrow night with the next Mishnah on the bottom of Nun Zayin Amud Beis. Have a beautiful night.